Welcome to another deep dive with us. And today we've got a wild one for you. We're going to be talking about Baltasar Engonga Edjo.
Baltasar, or as he's sometimes known, Bello.
Yeah, Bello, that's right. He was a high-ranking official in Equatorial Guinea, and he got caught up in a huge web of both corruption and infidelity.
Yeah, and it's not just, you know, a simple cheating scandal.
No, this is way beyond that.
Wow.
We're talking about like over 400 explicit videos here.
Wow.
With all sorts of people, like close family members, high-ranking officials' wives. Even the president's sister gets dragged into this whole mess.
Oh, wow. So it's a real deep dive into the heart of power and betrayal in Equatorial Guinea. What I find so fascinating about this is that it really shows how personal choices can have these massive public consequences, especially in this day and age, with how fast information travels.
Oh, absolutely. And, for anyone who wants to follow along or learn more about this, our source material today is a YouTube video that lays out this whole crazy saga. But yeah, like starting with Baltasar himself, on the surface, he seemed to have it all. Like he was a family man, successful career, even posting about family values on social media.
It's that contrast that really gets me.
Yeah.
Like he's presenting this perfect image to the world, but behind the scenes, there's this whole other reality going on.
Right. It's like this massive disconnect between who he's pretending to be and who he actually is.
Totally. And it makes you wonder if, like, that kind of pressure to maintain that perfect image contributed to his downfall. Like, it's not uncommon for people in positions of power to, create this public persona that's totally different from their private lives.
Absolutely. And let's not forget, Baltasar's position was a powerful one. I mean, he was the Director General of the National Financial Investigation Agency.
Oh, the irony.
Right. Like, talk about a conflict of interest. And, that's actually where this whole thing started. The authorities were initially investigating him for embezzling over $1.2 million. But what they found went way beyond just financial crimes.
Things took a very unexpected turn, didn't they?
Yeah, no kidding. They found during the investigation over 400, and I'm not exaggerating, 400 explicit videos.
400? That's not just a slip-up. That's a pattern of behavior. Like he was deliberately documenting these encounters.
And the variety of women in these videos is just like mind-boggling. It wasn't like he was looking for a certain type or anything. There were women of all ages, all different marital statuses, from all walks of life. It makes you think, like, what was the motivation behind all of this? Was it a need for validation, a desire for control, or was it something darker, like a thrill from exploiting his position of power?
Yeah, it really makes you think about the psychology behind it all. And the fact that he recorded everything so meticulously suggests this need for, like, control to capture these moments, maybe even use them as leverage later on.
That's scary. And then there's the personal betrayals. Like, some of these women were connected to him personally. I mean, we're talking his brother's wife, a cousin, even a pregnant woman.
Wow. It's hard to fathom that level of betrayal. It raises all these questions about trust, loyalty, and, the lasting damage to his own family.
And it goes beyond just the personal stuff, too. The videos included wives of over 20 government ministers, even the Director General of Police's wife. It's like, was he using these encounters for professional gain, like blackmail or coercion?
It's a disturbing possibility, especially when you consider the corruption investigation. It makes you wonder, was he leveraging these relationships for his own benefit? Was there a system of complicity going on here?
It's crazy. And then think about the locations. I mean, he filmed these videos everywhere. His office, hotels, public toilets,
It's like he had no regard for the risks, for the potential consequences,
Uh.
or even for the well-being of the other people involved. It's reckless.
To top it all off, he never used protection.
Oh, that's just...
So reckless.
Yeah.
It's like he had this sense of invincibility, like he thought he could get away with anything.
It's that illusion of power, isn't it? It can be
Yeah.
so dangerous. And the consequences here were huge. This scandal just, like, exploded in Equatorial Guinea. I mean, wives were sent back to their families, people were shamed publicly, and there were even reports of a suicide linked to the scandal.
Yeah, the ripple effect of this was massive. It really goes to show that actions have consequences, and sometimes those consequences can be devastating.
Yeah, absolutely. And this wasn't something that happened behind closed doors. This played out on a global stage. The details of this whole thing were everywhere. It went viral instantly.
Oh yeah, the online reaction was wild. Hashtags were trending. Singer Davido even commented on it. People were writing songs about it. The whole world was watching this whole thing fall apart in real time.
It just shows you the power of social media, Something that starts as a local event can become this global phenomenon almost overnight.
It's true. It's like that line between public and private life is just getting blurrier and blurrier. And what happens in one corner of the world can instantly become a spectacle for everyone to see.
Right, and it makes you think about how we consume and share information online.
Yeah.
Are we just entertained by someone else's downfall? Or are we actually contributing to the harm by spreading this information further?
It's a good question. It's a tough one to answer, really. But there's no doubt that the Baltasar scandal really got people talking. It started conversations about power, betrayal, accountability, and the role of digital media in our lives.
Big questions, for sure.
So let's dig into the legal and ethical mess that this whole situation created. I mean, Baltasar was arrested, right?
Yeah.
And he's facing charges of corruption, embezzlement, and even potentially endangering public health because of his behavior.
Yeah, and the legal aspects of this are really fascinating, especially when it comes to the issue of consent. One of the women in the videos said she agreed to be filmed, but thought the footage would be deleted afterwards.
Oh, wow.
So it raises all these questions about what true consent means, especially when there's such a power imbalance involved.
That's a great point. And then there's the whole question of Baltasar's wife. The YouTube video really focuses on this question of whether she knew what was going on. With over 400 videos floating around, how could she not?
It's a tough one. On the one hand, we don't want to blame the victim here, but on the other hand, it does raise questions about the dynamics of their relationship. What were their boundaries? What did they talk about when it came to privacy and fidelity?
It makes you wonder if his position of power, the authority he had at work, if that spilled over into his personal life too.
It's possible, right, that his sense of entitlement, of being in control, affected how he acted in his marriage too.
Yeah, maybe. And tragically, there are reports that his wife was hospitalized after news of the scandal broke.
It's a reminder of the human cost of all of this. The real people whose lives are shattered by these moments.
It's easy to get caught up in all the details and the drama of it, but we can't forget the real people involved, the pain this has caused.
Absolutely. And this isn't an isolated incident. We see this pattern, this abuse of power, happening all over the world.
So where do we go from here? What can we do to prevent this from happening again?
Well, I think it starts with awareness. Recognizing the problem and speaking out against it. We need to challenge the systems that allow this behavior to continue.
And what about the role of digital media in all this? Social media definitely played a huge role in exposing this scandal, but it also created a platform for all sorts of misinformation and harmful gossip to spread. How do we navigate that?
It's a balancing act, for sure. We need to be critical consumers of information, question our sources, be mindful of what we share and how we participate in these online spaces.
So it's not just about holding those in power accountable, it's about holding ourselves accountable too.
Exactly. We all have a responsibility to create a more ethical digital culture.
Powerful stuff. It really makes you wonder what the lasting impact of this scandal will be. Will it lead to any real change? Or will it just fade away and things will go back to normal?
I think this scandal has the potential to be a real catalyst for change. It's exposed the weaknesses in the system, the lack of transparency and accountability, and it started conversations that we desperately need to have.
So you're hopeful that something good can come out of this?
I am. I think even the most difficult situations can create opportunities for growth and progress.
Well, that's a great note to end on. As we wrap up this deep dive into the Baltasar scandal, I just want to leave you with this thought. This story isn't just about corruption and infidelity. It's a reminder that power can be incredibly seductive and dangerous. And it's a reminder that even the most carefully crafted facades can crumble when the truth comes out.
It's a reminder that we need to be vigilant, that we need to hold each other accountable and work towards a world where power is used responsibly and everyone is treated with respect and dignity.
Well said. And thank you everyone for joining us on this deep dive. It's been quite a journey. Until next time, keep exploring and keep asking the tough questions.
Yeah, it really forces us to look at some of those uncomfortable truths about power and betrayal and ambition and how it can all go wrong.
You mentioned earlier how this scandal kind of became this cultural phenomenon, right? It's one thing for it to make headlines, but it's a whole other level for it to be memes and songs and everyone online is talking about it. Why do you think this story in particular resonated so strongly with people?
I think it's a few things, There's that element of schadenfreude
Right.
that we all kind of have where we see someone powerful fall from grace and it's ooh,
Yeah.
a little bit of satisfaction there.
A little bit.
But I think there's also this deeper desire for accountability. people are just tired of seeing powerful people get away with stuff.
Yeah, they want to see them face consequences.
Exactly. So this scandal, in a way, becomes this symbol,
Right.
this outlet for people to be like, enough is enough.
Yeah, like a reckoning.
Yeah, a reckoning.
Yeah.
For all that corruption and hypocrisy and abuse of power.
It's interesting you bring up that, like, gender dynamic, because the YouTube video we're looking at also talks about how the women in the scandal, they faced way harsher consequences than Baltasar did.
Oh, yeah.
Like, socially, right? They're ostracized, sent back to their families, publicly shamed.
It just shows you how deep those societal norms run, right?
Yeah.
Where women are blamed and shamed more for infidelity, even though it takes two to tango, as they say. It's like they're somehow responsible for the man's actions.
It's like they have the power to control them or something.
Yeah, like it's their fault that he couldn't keep it in his pants, which is ridiculous.
Absolutely. And we can't forget about the woman who reportedly committed suicide because of this whole thing.
It's heartbreaking. It really highlights the emotional toll that these events can have on everyone involved.
Yeah. And the need for, like, empathy and support for those who are hurting.
Absolutely. It's easy to get lost in all the legal stuff and the political drama. But at the end of the day, real people are getting hurt.
Yeah, lives are being shattered.
And, the Baltasar scandal, shocking as it is, isn't unique. It's just one example of a much bigger problem.
So what can we do? What can we do as individuals to challenge that and create a culture of accountability?
Well, I think it starts with recognizing the problem, calling it out when we see it, and challenging the norms that allow it to continue, both in our own lives and in the institutions around us.
And what about the role of social media? Like, on one hand, it helped expose this whole scandal,
Right.
but on the other hand, it also created a space for all that misinformation and gossip to spread.
It's a double-edged sword, isn't it?
It is.
I think we need to be much more careful about what we consume online and what we share. Question our sources, you know?
Think before we post.
Exactly. Be mindful of the potential harm that spreading rumors and shaming people can do.
So it's not just about holding the powerful accountable, it's about holding ourselves accountable too.
Absolutely. We're all part of this digital world, and we all have a responsibility to make it a better place.
That's powerful. It makes me wonder, what will the long-term impact of this scandal be? Will we see any real change in Equatorial Guinea? Will it spark a bigger conversation about power and accountability, or will it just be forgotten and things will go back to how they were?
It's hard to say for sure, but I do think this has the potential to be a turning point.
Yeah.
It's exposed those vulnerabilities in the system,
Right.
the lack of transparency. It's started important conversations about gender roles and consent and the role of media. These are conversations that need to happen.
So you're cautiously optimistic.
I am. I think even from something this awful, some good can come.
I like that. So as we're wrapping up this deep dive into the Baltasar scandal, I want to leave our listeners with this. This isn't just some salacious story about corruption and infidelity. It's a cautionary tale. It's about how power can corrupt and how even the most carefully constructed facade can crumble when the truth comes out.
It's a reminder that we all need to be vigilant. Hold those in power accountable, both in our own lives and in society as a whole.
And it's a reminder that in this age of social media, our actions can have huge consequences.
So let's use that power for good. Let's work towards a more just and equitable world where power is used responsibly and everyone is treated with respect.
Beautiful. Thank you for joining us on this deep dive. It's been a really thought-provoking conversation, and we hope it's given you, our listeners, some things to think about.
Wow, yeah, this has been quite the deep dive, and I feel like we've just scratched the surface of this whole thing. It really makes you think, about how quickly things can spiral out of control.
Yeah, it really does. I mean, especially now, living in this age of instant information, everything just spreads so fast.
It's exciting and scary at the same time.
Right.
And this scandal really shows both sides of that.
It does. And it makes me think about, for everyone listening, like, how do you navigate this world, right? Where information is everywhere and it's hard to tell what's true and what's not.
Yeah.
How do you form your own opinions when you're constantly being bombarded with all these different narratives?
That's the challenge, isn't it?
Yeah.
It's more important now than ever to be able to think critically.
Totally. And it's not just about consuming information, it's about what we share too.
Oh,
The
yeah.
conversations we have online, are we contributing to this culture of like holding people accountable, being empathetic, or are we just spreading more gossip and judgment?
It's something we all need to be more aware of.
Absolutely. But before we wrap up, I wanted to go back to something you said earlier about like opportunities for growth. What makes you hopeful that something good can come out of this whole mess?
Well, I think the fact that we're having these conversations is a good sign. This scandal, it sparked a global dialogue about these really important issues.
Right, like power and accountability and consent.
Exactly. And the role of the media. These are conversations that we need to be having.
And it took this scandal to bring them to light.
Sometimes it takes something shocking to make people pay attention,
Right.
to make them confront these uncomfortable truths.
Yeah. So what's the takeaway here for everyone listening? What do we learn from this whole Baltasar saga?
I think it comes down to personal responsibility. We all have a role to play in creating a better world. Whether it's challenging those harmful norms in our own lives, or holding our leaders accountable,
Right.
or even just being mindful of what we do online, it all adds up.
Our actions have consequences.
Exactly, even the small ones.
That's a powerful message. And a good one to end on, I think. This deep dive has been, well, wild is an understatement, but we hope it's given everyone listening some food for thought.
Lots to think about.
Thanks for joining us, and until next time, keep exploring, keep asking questions, and keep diving deep.